Hello everyone, welcome to Elite Link Online. The poem that we are going to study now is The Hero, the military hero we are talking about. But why the poet has given the title Hero? Because we need to understand that the glory or the magnanimous, the magnificent picture that is portrayed in front of us sometimes arouses a lot of questions in our mind. So, the theme of this poem, written by Seyfried Sazun, is also that the bitter reality of war is only known to the one who faces it, and only the ones who have lost their loved ones in the war understand that it is an irreparable loss. Before we go into the details of the poem, let us read a little about Seyfried Sassoon. He was an English war poet, writer, and soldier, and became one of the leading poets of the First World War. So, in his poem, we see a lot about his own experience. In his poems, he described both the horrors of the trenches and satirized the patriotic pretensions of those who, in his view, were responsible for a war fueled by jingoism. For generations, war poets ignored the irony of battle and focused their poems on the typical theme of honor. By the First World War, however, the new tactics and machinery that were used transformed war in such a way that made it impossible for old ideals to apply to modern warfare. Cypher Sazzoon's The Hero dramatizes society's attempt to maintain an ideal about war and honor that is inapplicable to modern warfare. You cannot honor warfare. Okay, someone is giving the life for one's country. Okay, that is quite understood. But how fair it is to attack another country in the name of right, expanding your territory, or because you feel that the other nation has not been cooperative with you, it is still injustified. So, in the poem, an officer delivers news to a soldier's mother about her son's death using romantic old war rhetoric. The poem's dramatic irony heightens the generational gap between those like the soldier's mother who still believed in the honor of war and those like the soldier who experienced the horrors of warfare firsthand. The reader knows the true cause of the son's death while the mother remains ignorant. In thinking that her son died an honorable death, the mother brimmed with joy because he'd been so brave, her glorious boy. If the mother knew the truth about her son's death, she would not understand why her son had acted the way he had. She represents the previous generation who heard of glorious war stories yet never experienced war in its modern state. Both the mother and the society underestimated the severity, the seriousness of war. The mother's ignorance represents society's inability to accept the reality of war. The officer who delivers the message of her son's death nurtures his misconceptions because she cannot understand the irony of the war. Should the officer have told the mother the true nature of her son's death? Would the truth perhaps make her more aware of the grim reality, the sad reality of war? Would the mother, so certain of her son's bravery and war's prestige, be able to assimilate the truth with her own misconceptions? There are various answers to these questions. Let's start. The Hero by Siegfried Sazzoon. Jack fell as he had have wished, the mother said. Your fell means died, as he would have wished, and folded up the letter that she had read. The colonel writes so nicely. Something broke in the tired voice that quavered to a choke. She was controlling her tears that quavered, that shook her voice as if her throat was choking. She half looked up. We mothers are so proud of our dead soldiers. Then her face was bowed. Her face was bent. Quietly, the brother officer went out. The brother officer, that is the other officer who brought the letter. He had told the poor old dear some gallant, some brave lies that she would nourish all her days, no doubt, that she would keep with her all the days thinking that her son died fighting bravely for his nation. For while he coughed and mumbled, her weak eyes had shone with gentle triumph, brimmed with joy, brimmed because of the tears not being means filled with joy. Because he'd been so brave, her glorious boy, her honorable, respectable boy. He thought how Jack, cold footed, useless swine, had panicked down the trench that night the mine went up at Wicket Corner. So he stood cold footed, he was not even able to move. He was a useless swine, he was not a brave soldier. He had panicked, he was shocked, he did not know, he was confused. Down the trench, trench is a thing, it's like a small lift, or you can say it has four iron bars on each side, and there's a floor made of the iron. So it is a small lift where 4 or 6 people can go down, and it is rolled. Alright, so in that trench, that and the night that the mine went up, the mine means the missile that went up at Wicket Corner, how he had tried to get sent home, how he wanted to go back home, and how at last he died. Blown to small bits, he was blown to small bits, tiny pieces, because of the mine. And no one seemed to care except that lonely woman with white hair. And no one even seemed to care how he died or what happened. Only that woman with white hair, that is his mother. So this colonel has himself faced the actual horrors of the war, and he knows what happens to soldiers when they are at the war front. What we see in movies or maybe anywhere else, it is a very different glorified picture. But the horror of the war where a soldier is blown into pieces, it's so disturbing. How can one glorify war? And that is the question the poet is asking, that we cannot, or why should we glorify war? Why should we be proud that our son has died? We need to ask the nations to stop this bloodshed of war. Thank you.